Then 1.10.17. Monks, I know not of any other single thing that conduces to the confusion, to the disappearance of true Dhamma, as does negligence. Negligence indeed conduces to the confusion and disappearance of true Dhamma. Then 1.10.18. Monks, I know not of any other single thing so conducive to the establishment, to the non-disappearance of true Dhamma as earnestness. Earnestness indeed conduces to the establishment and non-disappearance of true Dhamma. These two suttas also tell us that if we want to preserve the true Dhamma, if we want the Dhamma to last, then we should not be negligent. If we look around, Buddhists are very often seen to be very negligent. We don't take our religion very seriously. And because we don't take our religion seriously, it conduces to the disappearance. When we compare ourselves with other religions, we find it's very shameful. Other religions, you seldom find, for example, a Christian who does not have a Bible, who does not read his Bible regularly, or a Muslim, his Quran. Whereas for a Buddhist, there are so many so-called Buddhists in this country. We ask them, what is the basic Buddha's teaching? What are the Buddha's discourses? They can't tell you. And if we count, we ask, how many Buddhists have the Nikayas, the suttas, the discourses of the Buddha that they should study, look up every day? Then you find so few of our Buddhists have the holy books of the Buddha. And that is not good for our religion. That's why if we are serious, that if we treasure the Buddha's teachings and we want to preserve it for our future generations, we should take the trouble to teach our young. You look at the Muslims, they get their children every day to go to class agama, perhaps spend 2 hours, as I have seen in certain areas in KL. After going to school, they finish at about 1 o'clock, they go back, take their lunch, and then by 3 o'clock they go to their class agama and they finish at 5 o'clock. Every day the children go for their class agama. Whereas for our Buddhists, to ask parents to send their children just once a week on a Sunday to go to a Sunday school, many parents are reluctant. And that, I think, is very shameful. We don't value enough the Buddha's teachings. If we value enough, we should take our religion seriously, as the Buddha has already warned here. I have seen some, for example, my own relatives, some of them are Catholics, and they have a very good practice. Every night after dinner, they get the whole family together after dinner, say, and they spend 1 hour where they pray for the good, for the peace of the world, for the good of the world. And they read from their Bible. So I don't see why our Buddhists cannot do the same thing, that we, the families should get together, maybe do 5 minutes or 10 minutes of chanting, and read something from the suttas for 15 minutes or something, and then maybe meditate for 15 minutes. And so you very easily you can spend 1 hour after dinner every night, and that will help to preserve the Buddha's teachings, which to us is invaluable. Now we come to 1.10.33. The Buddha said, monks, those monks who point out what is not Dhamma as Dhamma, such conduct of theirs is to the loss of many folk, to the misery of many folk, to the loss, the injury, the misery of devas and mankind. Moreover, such beget great demerit and cause the disappearance of this true Dhamma. That's this sutta. Here the Buddha is saying that there are some monks who do not understand the Dhamma enough, so that what is not Dhamma, what is contradictory to the Buddha's teachings, they say it is the Buddha's teachings. And because of that, they create great demerit, and they cause the disappearance of the true Dhamma. Now that's why it is very important for monks to study the teachings of the Buddha, which the Buddha calls in the suttas as Dhamma Vinaya. As I pointed out before, the Buddha never taught the Tripitaka. The Buddha taught the Dhamma Vinaya, as he has said in the suttas. The word Tipitaka or Tripitaka was never spoken by the Buddha. Or the Buddha only said Dhamma Vinaya was taught by him. And the Dhamma in the suttas, in the Anguttara Nikaya, book of the Fours, chapter of the Fours, the Buddha says that Dhamma is the suttas. And Dhamma, the suttas and the Vinaya are the Buddha's teachings. So, because some monks are not very familiar with the suttas, what is not Dhamma, what is contradictory to the Dhamma, they say is Dhamma. And so, because of that, they help to cause the disappearance of this true Dhamma. Now 1.11.1, the Buddha said, those monks who point out what is not Dhamma as not Dhamma, such conduct of theirs is to the profit of many folk, to the happiness of many folk, to the good profit and happiness of devas and mankind. Moreover, such monks beget great merit and establish this true Dhamma. Now this sutta here, the Buddha is saying that a monk should point out what is not Dhamma as not Dhamma. Because in that case they will profit many people. And also they would help to preserve this true Dhamma. That is why if we know that something that is being taught is not according to the Dhamma, we should speak out to preserve the true Dhamma. This is not being controversial, but just following the advice of the Buddha. In fact, the Buddha also, during his time, used to speak out against a lot of wrong teachings that were prevalent during his time. And because of that, he was also reviled by a lot of these external sect teachers. And in one sutta, he said, I do not quarrel with the world. He said, the world quarrels with me. One who teaches the Dhamma, the true Dhamma, does not quarrel with the world. So here, we would be following the Buddha's footsteps if we try to preserve the true Dhamma by speaking out against what is not Dhamma. Then 1.13.7, Buddha said, monks, I know not of any other single person who so perfectly keeps rolling the supreme wheel of Dhamma, set rolling by the Tathagata, as does Sariputta. Sariputta monks is the one who perfectly keeps rolling the supreme wheel of Dhamma, set rolling by the Tathagata. As you all probably know, the Tathagata is another word for the Buddha. Tathagata means the thus gone one. This sutta, I choose to mention it not because it has a lot of Dhamma content, but because there are some books in the Mahayana sutras that seem to say the opposite thing. For example, in the Lotus Sutra, they try to say that the Buddha, that the Sariputta, being an Arahant, did not understand the teachings of the Buddha, and instead they try to show that all the Bodhisattvas understood the real teachings of the Buddha. Whereas in this sutta, the Buddha says, nobody keeps the Dhamma wheel rolling so perfectly as Sariputta, which of course is completely opposite to what the Mahayana Sutras say. Now 1.14. In this 1.14, there are many disciples of the Buddha who are mentioned, the monks and nuns as well as laymen and laywomen. And the eminent ones are mentioned, those who are known for something. So I won't mention all of them, I'll just mention a few of them. Among the monks, the Buddha said, chief among those of great wisdom is Sariputta. Just stop for a moment. So here again, you see, in the Theravada Suttas, the Buddha always praises Sariputta and calls him the greatest in the wisdom. Whereas in the Mahayana Suttas, you find that they are always trying to bring down Sariputta and say that he has very shallow wisdom compared to the Bodhisattvas. This is also found in the Vimalakirti Sutra, where Sariputta was sort of put down. Then the Buddha said, chief among those of supernormal powers is Mahamoggallana. Mahamoggallana or Moggallana the Great is the best among the monks in the psychic power. Then the Buddha said, chief of my disciples who are monks, among those who are clairvoyant is Anuruddha. This disciple of the Buddha, Anuruddha, his what they call the heavenly eye, was so well developed that he said he could see the whole world system so clearly, like in the palm of his hand. Looking at the palm of his hand so clearly, he could see the whole world system. That was Anuruddha. Then the Buddha said, chief of his monks who receive offerings is Sivali. This Sivali is sometimes, a picture of Sivali is found in some Buddhist houses, because Sivali is supposed to have a lot of blessings, a lot of merit that he has received so much, that he receives so much offering. So a lot of people hope that by putting the picture of Sivali in their house, they will also have a lot of merit. Then the Buddha said, chief among my disciples who are of retentive memory is Ananda. So Venerable Ananda is the one with the best memory. That was why when the Buddha had passed into Nibbana, Ananda was asked by the other Arahants to repeat the words of the Buddha in the discourses of the Buddha. About 5,000 discourses, the Venerable Ananda could remember all of them. And then chief among the monks who know the Vinaya or disciplinary rules by heart is Upali. Upali was the Buddha's disciple who was foremost in the Vinaya, disciplinary conduct. And then the nun disciples, the Buddha said, chief among my women disciples who are nuns of long standing is Mahapajapati, the Gautamit. Now this Mahapajapati was the Buddha's stepmother. In actual fact, the Buddha's mother's sister, because it was said that after 7 days after the Buddha was born, his real mother passed away. And Mahapajapati at that time also had her own son, I think by the name of Nanda. And at the same time he gave milk to his son. He also provided milk to our Buddha when he was young, and he looked after the Buddha like his own son. So after the Buddha was enlightened, and when Mahapajapati became old, she also desired to become a nun. At that time there were no nuns, and she pleaded with the Buddha to become a nun, and the Buddha refused her. But Ananda interceded on her behalf and spoke for her and appealed to the Buddha many times until the Buddha relented. So she was the nun who was the longest in robes. Then not the longest in robes, but the first to be ordained. Then the chief among the nuns of great wisdom is Khema. Khema was supposed to be the wife of King Bimbisara, and after listening to the Buddha's discourses, she became so convinced of the Dhamma that she decided to become a nun, renounce the good life of a queen, and took on the life of a beggar nun. And because of her great merit, she had the greatest wisdom among the nuns. Chief of the nuns with supernormal powers is Upalavana. Upalavana is the nun with great psychic power. Sometimes in the suttas, it is said that Upalavana visited the Buddha at midnight, around midnight, when nobody else came to see the Buddha. She would come and she'd fly in the air and she'd stand in the air, waiting to see the Buddha. And the Buddha knew that she had come. The Buddha will invite her and she'd come and speak to the Buddha. And we find in the Vinaya, in the disciplinary rules for code for monks, that the Buddha generally did not allow nuns, even nuns generally, to see him personally. If nuns generally wanted to see the Buddha, they would have to speak to another monk, and the monk would speak to the Buddha, not the nun directly. However, the Buddha allowed arahant nuns to come directly to see him, even at midnight. Chief among the nuns who are proficient in the rules of discipline, the Vinaya, is Patachara. Patachara is the story of Patachara is found in the Dhammapada commentaries. It's a very moving story of this Patachara. She was supposed to have been come from a wealthy family, but she eloped with a slave. And later, after she gave birth to 2 sons, she wanted to come back and visit the parents, and along the way the husband died, and after that the 2 sons also died, so that she was so full of grief. When she came back to her house, her parents had also just passed away, so that she was so overcome by grief that she became mad. She became mad for a while and wandered around naked until she came to the Buddha, and then the Buddha helped to restore her sanity, and then after she became a nun, and from there she became an arahant. Now, among lay followers, laymen, the Buddha said, chief among his lay followers who are alms givers is Sudatta, also known as Anathapindika. Anathapindika, as most of you know, built a huge monastery for the Buddha, about 25 acres monastery, and he provided meals for monks every day. I think a few hundred monks every day, and practically used up all his fortune to support the Sangha. And the other chief benefactor of the Sangha was Visakha. Visakha also gave food, alms food to monks, I think to the tune of something like 2,000 monks every day. Now, chief among the lay followers who are Dhamma teachers is Chitta of Machikasanda. Now, this Chitta, there's a Sangyutta on Chitta in the Sangyutta Nikaya, a whole chapter devoted to Chitta. And we find there the Chitta was an anagami. Chitta was one of those laymen who, although he had a wife or wives, he renounced them to keep the 8 precepts every day. And he meditated, attained the jhanas, and he became an anagami. And Chitta was a very interesting person. He would, when he heard of monks coming to his area, he would offer food to the monks. And when he met the monks and offered them food, he would ask them to teach some Dhamma, and to get them to teach them some Dhamma, he would ask some questions about the Dhamma. And if they could not answer the question on the Dhamma, Chitta would teach them the Dhamma instead. So Chitta was a very interesting fellow. Now we come to lay women disciples. The Buddha said, monks, chief among my women disciples who are lay followers and who minister to the order, to the Sangha, is Visakha, Migara's mother. This Visakha is also known as Migara Mata. That means Migara's mother. Who is Migara? Migara was actually Visakha's father-in-law. Visakha's father-in-law was somebody who did not know the Dhamma, and because the Visakha taught him the Dhamma, that he was so grateful to Visakha that he called Visakha, who was his daughter-in-law, as mother. So that's why his Visakha is known as Migara's mother. Chief of the lay women followers who nurse the sick is Suppiya. In the Vinaya, the disciplinary code for monks, we find a story, a real story about Suppiya. Namely that one day, one of the monks was sick, and Suppiya used to go to the monastery almost every day to inquire of the monk's welfare. And normally, if she saw that a monk was sick, she would try to find out what the monk needed and try to look after the monk's need. So the Buddha allowed for a monk who is not well to take clear meat soup in the afternoon or in the evening. So the Suppiya offered to provide clear meat soup to this monk, and this monk agreed. So she went back and asked the servant or the slave to go to the market and buy some meat. But on that particular day, there was no meat sold in the market, because in India it was the custom that certain days of the year they would not sell meat. They become vegetarians. So Suppiya was disappointed that she thought to herself that she had already promised the monk, and if she did not keep up to her promise, it would seem to amount to telling a lie. So she was so devoted to the Sangha that she called her maid to her room. She took a knife and cut off a piece of flesh from her thigh, gave it to the maid and asked the maid to cook and bring it to the monastery for that monk. And the maid did that. So in the evening, the husband came back from work, and normally Suppiya would come out and greet him. But on that day, Suppiya did not come out. So the husband went to the room to see Suppiya and found that she could not walk because of her condition. Instead of getting angry, the husband was so happy, that the wife could do such a thing which very few people could do. So she invited the Buddha the next day to his house for a meal, and the Buddha came. And then after the meal, the Buddha asked where was Suppiya, and the husband said Suppiya was in the room. Buddha asked her to come out, and the husband said that it was not that she could not walk, not convenient for her to come out. Then the Buddha asked the husband to help her to come out, and the husband did that. So when she came out, the moment the Buddha looked at her, the wound was completely healed. And this is the story of Suppiya. Now 1.15.10, the Buddha said, "It is impossible, monks, it cannot come to pass that in one world system at the same time there should arise two arahants who are fully enlightened ones, Sammasambuddha. But monks, it is quite possible for a single arahant, a fully enlightened one, to arise." These few suttas here concerning the impossible are also found in Majjhima Nikaya number 115. And this particular sutta saying that you cannot find two Buddhas, Sammasambuddhas, at the same time in one world system is another one of those suttas that seem to be in conflict with the Mahayana sutras. For example, in the Earth Store Bodhisattva Sutta, they say that many Buddhas came when the Buddha started to preach. In fact, you can find the Diamond Sutra in the Mahayana Sutras also contradicting this Earth Store Bodhisattva Sutra, because in the Diamond Sutra, it is said that after a Buddha has passed into Mahaparinibbana, if you expect to see the Buddha again, or hear his voice, or touch him, etc., then the Diamond Sutra says that you don't understand the Dhamma, and you have gone along the deviant path. In other words, once a Buddha has passed into Nibbana, you can never see him again, you can never touch him again, hear his voice, etc. So, That's one thing. If you investigate, you find that there are certain sutras that contradict each other. It is only in the original 4 earliest suttas, in the Pali suttas, the 4 Nikayas, that you find they are very consistent, that there is no contradiction. 1.15.12, the Buddha said, "It is impossible, monks, it cannot come to pass that a woman should be an Arahant who is a Sammasambuddha. But monks, it is quite possible for a man to be one." And then Sutta number 13, 14, 15 and 16, the Buddha says, it is impossible, it cannot come to pass that a woman should be a universal monarch, or Sakadeva Raja, or Mara, Satan, or Brahma. So here we find in these few suttas, there are 5 things a woman cannot become a Sammasambuddha, cannot become a universal king who rules over the whole world, cannot become Thikong, Sakadeva Raja, cannot become Mara or Satan, cannot become Brahma. And this again, you find there's a little contradiction in the Lotus Sutra, where it is mentioned that a woman can become a Sammasambuddha. Here also, it shows that there is a little difference between a man and a woman. Sometimes we like to think that a man and a woman are the same, but there is some difference. 1.17.5 Monks, I know not of any other single thing so apt to cause the arising of wrong view, if not yet arisen, or the increase of wrong view, if already arisen, as Anguttara consideration or Anguttara attention. In him who gives not thorough consideration, wrong view, if not arisen, does arise, or if already arisen, does increase. Then 1.17.6, the Buddha says, Monks, I know not of any other single thing so apt to cause the arising of right view, if not yet arisen, or the increase of right view, if already arisen, as thorough consideration. So here, these 2 suttas, we find to have right view is very important, to have thorough consideration, which, as I have mentioned before, is to be able to see the problem or whatever is being considered or contemplated thoroughly with proper attention. Now, to have thorough attention, yoniso manasikara, to be able to contemplate a problem up to the source of that problem, one needs to have a good concentration, to have to be able to look at a problem and see it to the end, and for that you got to have a fairly good concentration. 1.17.7 Monks, I know not of any other single thing so apt, when body breaks up after death, to cause the rebirth of beings in the waste, the woeful plains, the downfall in hell, as wrong view. Possessed of wrong view, monks, beings are reborn in the waste, the woeful plains, the downfall in hell. Then 1.17.8 Monks, I know not of any other single thing so apt, when body breaks up after death, to cause the rebirth of beings in the happy lot, in the heaven world, as right view. Possessed of right view, monks, beings are reborn in the happy lot, in the heaven world. So here we can see why wrong view and right view, the result of having wrong view and the result of having right view. And that's why it's so important to have right view. Because if we have wrong view, it brings us into the woeful plains. So to have right view, we have first to have to have thorough concentration on mind. The other thing is, we should, if we have the good fortune to be able to listen to the Saddhamma, the true Dhamma, then which can bring us to have right view, then we are very, very fortunate. It is, if we look into the suttas, the Buddha said he contemplated the last 91 kapas, 91 ages of time. One age of time, one world cycle is extremely long. The Buddha said it is so long a time that it is quite hard to imagine how long it is. In fact, the Buddha says, to give you an idea of how long a world cycle is, the Buddha said, you imagine a cube, a rock, which is 7 miles, a yojana, which sometimes translated, said to be 7 miles or sometimes 10 miles. 7 miles long, 7 miles wide, and 7 miles high. A cube, 7 miles. And once in 100 years, you take a soft piece of cloth, you wipe it once. And after 100 years, you wipe it once again. How long will it take before that you can wear away that rock just by wiping it with a soft cloth? The time is so long that it's quite unimaginable. And the Buddha said he looked into the past for 91 world cycles, and he only found 6 Buddhas, 6 Buddhas, which means that one Buddha appears in more than 10 world cycles on the average. So to be able to listen to the true Dhamma now is something very, very fortunate for us. Then 1.18.1. Monks, one person born into the world is born to the loss of many folk, to the discomfort of many folk, to the loss, discomfort and sorrow of devas and mankind. What person? One who has wrong view. He of distorted view leads many folk astray from righteousness or the right path, and plants them in unrighteousness or the wrong path. This is the one. Then 1.18.2. Monks, one person born into the world is born for the profit of many folk, for the happiness of many folk, for the profit, comfort and happiness of devas and mankind. What person? One who has right view. He who has right view leads many folk from the wrong path and plants them in the right path. This is the one. So you see, if you follow somebody with the wrong view, then it is very unfortunate. And this person who has wrong view, he is born to cause a lot of pain to a lot of people. But a person who is born with right view, he benefits many, many people.